Now I call upon Avan Vakaria to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Shani. I am delighted to welcome Hormuz Sorabji. Hormuz Sorabji is widely regarded as India's leading automotive journalist. He is presently the editor of Autocar India magazine, India's best selling automobile magazine by far. Not only have his articles appeared in major publications in India and abroad, but he is widely quoted by the media for his views and is a regular face on the Autocar show on the Times Network. He is on the jury panel for the International Engine of the Year Awards and the World Car of the Year Awards. Hormuz has driven in over 70 countries and across continents. He has been involved in several long distance expeditions, which include drives from Germany to India and Delhi to Paris. He was also a key member of the organizing team for the government led ASEAN rally from Singapore to Delhi. Hormuz has also driven to the four corners of India, from Kargil to Kanyakumari and Kutch to Kibitu. He has driven almost every car from a Nano to a Ferrari. Now, all this is about the Hormuz that the world knows, but those who are close to him know him for his warmth and caring nature, and most of all, for the mischievous streak in him. Each and every one of his friends have fallen prey to one of his pranks, much to his wife Nahid's embarrassment. He has a tremendous sense of humor and has on every occasion had us all doubled up with laughter. Hormuz is also greatly interested in photography and has a great love for nature. He tries to spend as much time as he can at his home in Mableshwar. I am sure we will have an interesting yet fun afternoon with him. Over to you, Hormuz.
Thanks, Avan. Thanks for that introduction. I think I'm glad you left a lot of things out uh, just as well. But good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, thanks so much for having me here on a topic which is actually a burning topic these days. Electric vehicles, largely led by the pollution, global warming, all that's happening in the world today. And electric cars have really gathered momentum. In India, not so much. But actually, what I'd like to do is I just wanted to start with a bit of background, just to set the context as to electric cars vis-a-vis the usual internal combustion engine, which has been around since the car was invented in 1885, and it's still around very much. But obviously, we are seeing the end of it. So really, a revolution that's coming after over a century of one power plant that has really endured for all these years. But it looks like its time is up. So I think what I want to start off by saying is, the internal combustion engine, the way you and I drive cars and go to the pump and fill petrol, I mean, it's been one of the absolute marvels of modern civilization, the ease with which you can travel to anywhere, the way I've traveled all over the world in it. But the biggest bogey, or the, let's say, the biggest enemy of the internal combustion engine has been two things. One has been pollution, and fundamentally pollution in two ways. You can split pollution into a health issue and an environmental issue. Because just to give you a bit of a chemistry lesson, all internal combustion engine cars are right now fueled by hydrocarbons, which is your diesel, petrol, gas, all that sort of thing, which comes out of the earth. So hydrocarbons, as the name suggests, is a cocktail of hydrogen and carbon. Now, hydrogen is not so bad, but carbon, when it comes out, it kind of creates all kinds of issues. You get carbon monoxide, you get CO2, you get unburnt hydrocarbons. So earlier, what the problem really was one of health, because the emissions which came out of exhaust, they were really very toxic and poisonous. So they were really serious health hazards. But as technology improved, frankly, the health is not so much the issue. In fact, the cars have become so clean. They're like chemistry laboratories on wheels, because the air literally which goes in some polluted cities, I would even go so far to say that the air coming out, or the emission from the exhaust, is sometimes cleaner because it's really been scrubbed with technology. You've got particulate filters, you've got catalytic converters and all that. So the health issue, the toxicity, not so much a problem now with internal combustion engines. But What you can't avoid is CO2, which is carbon dioxide. And that today is really the root of the problem of global warming, this crazy weather we have. It rains when you don't expect it to, the Arctic is melting, and it's definitely proven that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and is responsible for global warming. Now, there's no way you can get rid of CO2. The only way you can minimize it is by reducing the fuel consumption of cars, because even in its cleanest form, what comes out of the exhaust pipe at best is water and CO2. Neither of these are actually health problems, but CO2 is an environment problem. And it's really down to reducing the carbon footprint. So you've heard of carbon, 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 and it's because carbon really combines with oxygen to form CO2, which is which is really the biggest culprit for global warming and a lot of environmental issues today. And it's really becoming how would I say, an emergency situation. So for future generations, we have to act now and reduce CO2. So the only way to reduce CO2 completely or eliminate CO2 is to eliminate hydrocarbons. So that means getting rid of internal combustion engines which run on hydrocarbons and looking at alternative powertrains. Now, there are multiple alternative powertrains people have looked at, but of course, electric is the one that people have dabbled with. Now, earlier they had tried with electric, but the technology on electric cars really wasn't there, because fundamentally it's all down to the battery. The battery really is the core of an electric vehicle, and it's the battery technology that will drive electric adoption in the future. Because batteries have to be, firstly, they have to have the range, they have to have the capacity, they have to have the right density, they can't be too heavy, they have to be cost effective, all that sort of thing. So when we started off with good old lead acid batteries, which is what you have in your cars, a normal battery. You had big chunks of them. Your golf carts, still some of them run on lead acid batteries. The carts at airport buggies, they run on lead acid batteries. Lead acid, very cheap, but frankly not very efficient and not good enough for running cars. So then I think the new technology breakthroughs fundamentally have been lithium ion. So now lithium ion has come. That is the technology, that's what's in your phones. Lithium ion is pretty much the standard today. And with more and more advances in lithium ion, electric cars are becoming more and more of a reality. So we've seen countries like Norway, there's over 50% adoption. Can you imagine, in Norway, 50% of all electric cars, 50% of all cars are electric in Norway. That's a huge proportion. And you are seeing electric vehicles gathering pace all over the world, primarily because there are targets to reduce CO2, which is carbon dioxide. And really the best way to do that is to kind of move away from internal combustion and look at alternative sources. The other options are hydrogen. Hydrogen is also a possibility. That is also one way, another alternative, but clearly hydrogen has its own issues because firstly, to make the hydrogen, you have to use a lot of energy, and sometimes that energy produces CO2, so it kind of defeats the purpose over there. But again, hydrogen is something people are looking at, but then you need a proper infrastructure to dispense it, and probably hydrogen will come for long distance vehicles like buses and trucks and things like that. But really for cars, two-wheelers, last mile connectivity, the battery powered electric vehicle, what we call a BEV, that really is becoming the big thing right now. So let's turn to India. India, really, to be honest, we've been behind the curve. We are nowhere in the race right now when you compare us with China and other markets. We started off 20 years ago with a small car called the Maini Riva, which ran on lead acid batteries. I don't know if any of you have driven it, but once I drove it, and I think I remember Nahid, my wife, was with me, and we kind of ran out of charge almost and nearly never made it home on that. I mean, the range was just terrible. With the AC on, it would be around 50-60 kilometers, which really wasn't very practical except for very, very short hops. But anyway, that was the start of it. And now we've seen more electric cars have come in, but again, compared to the rest of the world, India is really very, very far behind. So let's talk about what the challenges of electric vehicles are. Fundamentally, there are three challenges: why the adoption is not so widespread, and why in India also people aren't embracing it wholeheartedly. So fundamentally, there are three challenges. One is the cost of the battery. So battery costs are really very, very high. Lithium ion, that's how, and we import the cells. We don't manufacture the actual cells in India, so that attracts a certain amount of duties. As it is, the material is quite expensive. So batteries, the cost has come down with the scale. So, from what used to be a couple of $100 per kilowatt hour, batteries are kind of their capacity or their metric is kilowatt hours. So typically a car, like a small car would have 30 to 40 kilowatt hour battery. A big car would have an 80 to 90 kilowatt hour battery. But each kilowatt hour, the cost of the battery was a couple of $100. So you multiply that by the number of kilowatt hours needed for a battery pack in a car. You can imagine that the battery itself was about 60% of the cost of the car. And it's still the largest proportion. It is coming down, but you need the batteries to be at around $120 per kilowatt hour to start making sense. And looking at certain cars, you've got a good example is you've got a Tata Nexon, which is an EV, and a Tata Nexon, which is a diesel, and that parity is coming close. So, but still the EV is much more expensive, fundamentally because of the battery cost. So battery cost is a big challenge for us, because India is a very, very price sensitive market. So until the battery cost, which then the overall cost of the EV doesn't come down, people are not going to embrace electric vehicles. Then the second issue really is the range, because that is a big challenge. In fact, I would say that is the number one challenge, because you can't then use a car as your primary car or an everyday car and just get out and drive wherever you want, because a range, of course, is linked to charging infrastructure, which I'll come to, because all these cars have a limited range. I mean, at best, driving it normally, you won't get more than 320 kilometers in the most expensive ones, whereas even the smaller ones, or let's say the cheapest electric vehicle today, which is the Tata Nexon EV, will at best give you around 200 kilometers. Now, all this is fine in the city. In fact, they make a great city car. EVs really have a good case for it, because many people have access to a charging plug. And you never do more than 200 kilometers in a couple of days, so charging is not a problem. But again, it's fair to say that EVs work best in the city where you have access to a plug. And that brings me to the third issue, which is the charging infrastructure, which is still very much in its infancy in India. If you go abroad, again, even countries like UK, charging also is an issue over there. There are a lot of places where electric car owners, they turn up at a charging place, either it's not working or it's blocked over there, and charging a car takes a minimum of 15-20 minutes, or even sometimes half an hour. So it's not as easy as just filling fuel in it and going off. It does take time to charge the car, though there are different fast chargers and slow chargers, which we'll come to. So I think charging infrastructure also a big hurdle, because while it's fine in the city, typically most EV owners will have a charging box at home or maybe at the office. So you're quite okay. You can charge the car overnight, even on a normal 15 amp plug, you can get enough juice and you're going. But if you're taking it out of town and you don't have charging infrastructure, you can get stuck. And the thing about an electric car is if it runs out of juice, you're stuck. And frankly, you can't even push it because of the way it is. It's got these motors which completely lock up. So you have to literally get a recovery vehicle, put it on a truck and take it. Though people are getting more and more inventive right now and having these trucks which you can call, and they have a charger on board. So you just charge your vehicle while you're stranded to get enough juice to get to where you're going. But again, it's really not convenient and still quite far away. So really in India, also, I think the fundamental real issue is that electric cars are still very expensive. I mean, they're basically for people who would use it as their second car, for people who don't travel too much out of town, or they don't travel out of town at all. It's good for city runs, that sort of thing. So there are very few people like that. And obviously, the market is very, very limited. Again, the other challenge with electric cars is that the choice has been very limited compared to what there is abroad. So right now in the market, there are only 6 electric cars you can buy. There will be some more coming, but it's not going to be a flood of them. So everyone expects a big flood of electric cars to come, but I think we are going to be last in the race compared to other markets. So we've got at the lower end, the most affordable one is the Tata Nexon EV, but that still comes to around 20 lakhs on road. which is quite a lot. Then you've got the MG ZS EV, which is 4 lakhs more expensive, and then the Hyundai Kona. And then suddenly there's a big jump to the really expensive ones, which are the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mercedes EQC, and now the Audi e-tron, which is actually going to be launched on the 22nd. And these are all going to be a crore plus. So really, I mean, people aren't going to be willing to spend so much on it. So right now, it's still very much a niche. It is increasing. And I think what's driving a little bit more interest in it, especially at the lower end, and especially with two-wheelers, which we'll come to, is the price of petrol. At over 100 rupees a liter, I think it's a good time to explore the option. I think more than anything, it's the fuel prices that will, let's say, accelerate growth and accelerate demand. And people will be willing to compromise or accept the compromises of EVs just to save on the running costs. So, I think the other big, let's say, opportunity is with the two-wheelers. We are the largest two-wheeler market in the world. And just to even get a small percentage of that in EVs would be a huge number. So just recently, Ola, you'll all know Ola as a cab company, but they've gotten to electric mobility, and they've just announced that they are launching an electric scooter. Price would be around 80,000 rupees with a range of about 150 kilometers, which is quite good, and a top speed of around 100 kilometers. So that's really a very substantial kind of a two-wheeler and a good alternative to a bike. And they've taken bookings starting at just 499 rupees. In fact, I've booked one. Let's see how it goes. And they've picked up 1 lakh orders. Now, even if they fulfill about 20-30% of that, that's more than all the electric two-wheelers, sold. So that's a disruption that is happening in India. Companies like Ola are coming in, they're very well funded. So they have cash to burn and kind of really buy the market and buy the EV segment. And they've also, they're investing in charging network. So they are planning to have 100,000 chargers all over the country, which is a pretty decent number. Obviously, these chargers will be concentrated in the cities that they will be selling. So with this kind of, companies like Ola, they will kind of, let's say, promote EV adoption a bit faster. But I think one has to be cautious, especially with four-wheelers, because again, cars are, quite expensive, and we don't see the price of cars coming down. And really, India is such a cost-sensitive market that until there is, let's say, proper value seen in an EV, customers are not going to accept it, let's say, en masse, so to speak, because people are more interested in, saving their pockets than saving the planet. So unless there's a compelling reason in terms of cost savings, overall cost of ownership, which includes the cost of the car, the running cost over, let's say, a 5-6 year period, I think, until that happens, we won't see it happening in a big way. But I see the tipping point happening in around 2024 or so, when Maruti comes in with their first EV. And I think Maruti will democratize the whole EV piece, because they're going to come in with a really low cost one. They're tying up with Toyota for it. They're going to have it very locally made. So the cost is going to be very competitive. And their target is to have about 40,000 EVs in the first year. Just to put that in context, today, I think the entire Indian market is around, I would say around 30,000 EVs a year. So with Maruti just doing 40, you're immediately, more than doubling that. So that's really the trajectory. Then, of course, you'll have Toyota. Toyota and Maruti are partners in this. So they're jointly developing this product. So you'll have one with a Maruti badge, one with a Toyota badge. You've got other companies also looking at EVs. So everyone will come, but I think it will take time. It'll come, I would say, later rather than sooner compared to other markets, because EVs need a lot of investment, and they need a lot of scale. They need a lot of numbers. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. If you don't have the market for it, you don't have the numbers, you can't afford the investment that it needs. So it needs all that. But having said that, about even 5-6 years ago, it was a gamble to, do an EV. But today it's a gamble not to do an EV. So everyone's hedging their bets. They all have some sort of EV play. A lot of them are just putting their toe in the water, not super serious about it. Even today, the best-selling EV, which is a Tata Nexon, they're just doing about 500 cars a month. And to put that in context, the best-selling car, which is a Maruti, does about 20,000 a month. So you can see the difference in numbers, but definitely it is growing. And with the EVs growing as well, I think there are a lot of other challenges of EVs which one has to also consider. So it's, you might remove the environmental issue by, let's say lowering the carbon footprint, but there are other issues as well. Other issues is the recyclability of the lithium-ion battery. Really, there's no solution to that yet. They haven't really figured that out yet. So, you don't want to end up having them in massive landfills, which really again isn't great for the environment. So the recyclability is a big challenge. And you've got other smaller issues like a lot of people are using cobalt. Cobalt is a good material for batteries, and they're looking at that. But again, a lot of the cobalt comes from DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, and there they use a lot of child labor to mine. So you've got all these issues which are there. So it's not that it's the silver bullet and the end of everything, but what it does take care of the big issue, which is CO2 emissions, and to lower CO2 emissions. Also, from an India standpoint, there's a need to go in for EVs, because fundamentally our oil import bill is huge. We import the majority of our oil. But having said that, today the government is enjoying taxing the hell out of petrol. It's an easy way to get cash from consumers, with a whole bunch of taxes which have been slapped on it, which is the main reason why the price has gone up, even though the let's say the dollar price of an imported barrel is not that much. It's all the taxes really which are pushing up the price of fuel. So obviously they want to reduce the dependency on oil imports, and at the same time, of course, we've also signed up to certain conventions where we are committed to reduce our CO2 emissions as well. So definitely, even from an Indian standpoint, there is. But I get the sense that a lot is being done right now by the states. Each state is individually announcing a lot of SOPs, a lot of concessions for EV owners, whether in terms of taxes, et cetera, et cetera. But I think a lot more has to be done. And clearly, I think the situation we face in India is really that EVs, to be honest, right now are for rich people, because they are very, very expensive. So that doesn't kind of really sit too well. Because if you look at the EVs today, they are all in a certain price bracket, which the majority can't afford. But I think when the two-wheelers get electrified, I think that's when really we will see this mass scale adoption of EVs. So I think, from an Indian point of view, I think let's say, I think we need to be practical. I don't think it's going to happen that fast as it is in the world. Of course, there'll be an exponential jump, but I still think it will take time. People are talking of a big number of about 10% by 2025. I don't see that happening, because we know manufacturers' plans, and there's no real manufacturers anything, no product by then. So Tata Motors have talked of getting 10 EVs by 2025. I find that highly doubtful whether it's possible, because if you start now, it'll take you around 4 years to have a whole family of EVs ready. Mahindra also starting an EV program, and again they have plans, but nothing again before 2025. So I think until then, after that we'll see a big jump in EV proliferation, and then by then even the infrastructure and all will have improved. But as I said, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when we will really be jumping into, let's say at a tipping point. They always say the tipping point is when the EV sales overtake the normal, let's say IC engine sales, internal combustion engine sales. I don't see that happening, honestly, for quite a while, because really deep and rural pockets and all, it'll take a while for EVs to proliferate. Just to want to wrap up by just sharing some thoughts or experiences on using an EV. We've driven EVs all over the country. We just have to. It's part of our job. I can tell you that in the city, it is absolutely fantastic. My advice is, if you want it as a city car, you're just using a city car, and EV makes immense sense. And ironically, this whole issue of infrastructure actually works to your benefit, because you never have to queue up at a pump to fill up. You just do it at home overnight. So you just plug in overnight, the battery gets charged. A lot of companies give you a fast charger. So within 6 hours it can go from 0 to 100, which is quite okay, and that's good for driving it a couple of days in the city. They are so easy to drive. I mean, what people don't realize is the ease of driving an EV. There's no jerks, no vibrations, there's no hesitation. There's no kind of delays in the way the automatic transmission works. You just tap it, and in a one linear shove, it just goes. It's quiet, it's refined. It really is a very low stress kind of driving experience. So, it goes beyond really the environmental benefits and even the cost benefits. So yeah, the cost benefit is also there. You're just plugging it in. Frankly, I don't think it would have a real big impact on your electricity bill. So it's practically running it for free, which is really a big thing these days. So again, driving in the city, absolutely no problem. So anyone who's looking at an EV for city use, they're very practical. The current models give you enough range. Obviously, you need to have access to a parking which has a charging socket, either at home or at the office. You don't need it in both places actually, because the range is good enough for just zipping around. And taking it out of town is a different story. I've had some experiences. We took the Mercedes EQC to Mahabaleshwar, and honestly, I couldn't make it there. Though the specified range is 400 kilometers, it couldn't do more than 270, which was to Panchgani. I had to literally stop in Panchgani and plug in to a friend's hotel over there. So yeah, it was very, very stressful at that point. And I realized one thing, the range is very sensitive. And that's really the biggest challenge for any EV owner, is that you can't trust what the range starts off with, because it can be completely different while you're moving. It's very sensitive to the conditions. And I realized the three things which really kill the range was really the altitude, because I was going from 0 to 4,500 feet. And that is a battery killer, because we had three ghat roads going up. We had Lonavla, we had Khambhatki, and then we had the final Y Ghat. And that really was a battery killer. But coming down, absolutely no problem, made it with enough range to spare. So I think really going forward, the challenge is going to be on range management and how companies can, increase the range, because it can be very frightening, because that you don't have access to just charging it anywhere. And even if you do, it can take a lot of time. As we speak, I think there is still no charging point or they've just installed a fast charger on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway. So talk a little bit about fast chargers. Or what they call DC chargers, direct current chargers, that requires industrial infrastructure for electricity. You can't really do it at home, because it really requires a massive load. And some of these fast chargers cost around 20 lakhs to set up with the whole thing. So really, it can only be done on a commercial basis. But it's very easy to calculate. Typically, fast chargers are 25 kilowatts to 50 kilowatts. Tata Power have got a whole range of around 25 kilowatt chargers all over the city, which is good enough. Now, what 25 kilowatt does is, if you have a 25 kilowatt hour battery, it will charge it in 1 hour. So let's say a Jaguar I-Pace, which I was driving, it has a 90 kilowatt hour battery. So it would, let's say, give you 25 kilowatts in 1 hour, which is good enough for getting you home. But to charge the whole battery, that would take a good 3 hours. You get wall box chargers, which runs off your normal AC current, but then they have to just audit your, your whole electrical infrastructure at home. And we've got one fixed in the office. It's an ABB unit. It's 11 kilowatt hours. Now that's really pretty fast. So 11 kilowatt hours overnight charge, no problem. It can top it up fast. And just to put it in perspective, you can even use your normal 15 amp plug where your air conditioner goes into, but those are really slow. They are about 2.6, 2.8, maximum 3 kilowatt current. So you can imagine 3 kilowatt to charge, let's say, a 90 kilowatt hour battery. So I remember the EQC, which came with a really flat battery to Mahabaleshwar. Luckily, we had another car, but to go around. But it took me over 24 hours to charge. It's simple mathematics. at the rate of 3 kilowatts, a flat battery of 90 kilowatts, it would take you around 30 hours to charge. And maybe more than that. So these are really the issues of electric cars. But again, I think it's a matter of when rather than if. And now the trend is irreversible. A lot of companies have given up, let's say, not only development of internal combustion engine. Companies have now stated that by 2025, 2030, we will produce only electric vehicles. We will produce no internal combustion cars. So really, that's a huge change, a huge revolution, which we are witnessing, for the first time in the 130-year-old history of the car, which had so far run on one kind of engine. Obviously, engines have improved over generations and decades, but the principle of it, the four-stroke cycle, the internal combustion engine, that remained unchanged. But now that is completely changing, and we are really witnessing this revolution. I think India won't be at the cutting edge of it. I think we will be behind. It's not such a bad thing. Sometimes the technologies, they change so fast. Now, even in the battery side, they're talking about lithium ion going to solid state batteries. So at least, it's best to sometimes have, I would say, a last mover advantage where you can see what the technologies are. So you don't have to invest in something that becomes obsolete really quickly. So yeah, I think that's basically, just a quick wrap on what the electric journey is looking like. We are glad we are part of it. We are constantly driving electric cars. We're going to be doing more and more stuff with it, and obviously writing about it, talking about what the advantages, disadvantages are. And as I said, advantages clearly in the form of not only the pollution, but how easy they are to drive, how stress-free they are to drive. But they get very stressful when you have take them out of town and there's no infrastructure as yet. So, but the time will come. And with this kind of, let's say, a bright future ahead for electric cars, even in India, I'd like to just maybe turn it back, to you all. And if there are any questions, happy to take them.
Thanks for the very comprehensive study and expose to us. It's given us a very clear picture. Mudit, do I have the permission to ask the first question?
Thank you, President Shahnaz. Thank you, Hormuz. You left me questionless, but I have a related question. What do you see about driverless cars, both in the West, America, and maybe later on in India? Thank you.
I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, at least. So, I don't think it'll happen. I mean, there was a lot of talk on driverless cars because, but it's that last 5% which is a challenge. The way it works is, frankly, it's obviously you had really phenomenal softwares like machine learning, deep learning, AI. Basically, what it does is it reads a library of events and stores those events. But what they found is, until it actually maps each and every possible situation on the road, whether it's a goat running across the road, and then it has to, log that in, put it into its brain and say, okay, and, deal accordingly. So I think especially in India, it won't happen. It's not that you can't use driverless cars. I mean, technically, if you got a driverless car, you could get it here, but frankly, you wouldn't move because any obstruction it would see, it would stop. So it would be very frustrating. You'd probably be standing still, or it would just inch forward and again stop. So they're really not practical right now because this whole concept of, the unpredictability of the situation, it's not been able to really absorb all of it. Of course, you need 5G connectivity because all that data you can't store in the car. As I said, this whole library of situations, this events, it has to be off the cloud and you need 5G for that. Of course, 5G will come. So I don't see it happening because, at the end of the day, you can't have it 99% accurate. You have 1% or even 0.001% of a situation which the computer has not, or the brain has not kind of analyzed and stored as, how to deal with it. It could lead to fatal accidents, which we've been seeing. So I don't see that happening. It will happen in controlled environments like campuses, maybe select closed highways where, it's all very controlled and the variability and the unpredictability is not there. in those questions it would work. But in day-to-day driving, just getting out of your gate over here and going, not happening in a hurry.
Hormuz, we have several people wanting to ask several questions. I had a quick one. When you're using power, you are using some kind of, power. So isn't that considered to some extent, that you're not really saving the environment?
Yeah, so that is, it depends where the power is coming from, and that's a good point. I should have touched upon that in when I spoke earlier. So that is a standard debate that what they're saying is you're shifting one part of the pollution from the tailpipe to the power plant. Yeah, it's true, and especially in India where 60% of our power generation is thermal and all.
From hydrocarbons.
Yeah, from hydrocarbons. But even having said that, couple of things, what it does is at street level, you've reduced the tailpipe emissions. So at least from a health point of view, that's not there. And again, the efficiency of let's say electric cars is so good that it kind of offsets the the electricity produced from a thermal plant. But having said that, there is a debate. I mean, honestly, today, the energy density of things like, let's say even a very clean diesel, they are superb from a CO2 perspective, because diesels are now completely cleaned up as far as emissions. They were always, the bad guys of emissions, especially NOx, which were cancer causing, but that is now completely nixed with particulate filters and NOx traps and stuff like that. But they are so efficient right now that, their CO2 footprint is quite low. So yes, there are, but obviously the move is to try and do more and more power generation from renewable sources. Then they start making even more sense.
Mayank, can you go ahead with your question?
Yeah, Hormuz, on the power thing, why are we not seeing solar powered chargers and solar powered panels on the cars themselves, which would continuously charge the batteries?
It's because...
is that going to come?
No, it can't come, because, I mean, I don't know if you've tried charging your phone from a solar charger. I mean, the yield or the energy density is just not there. You would need to have a panel the size of a, let's say, I don't know, a small little football field to kind of power the battery on a consistent basis to that. So it's all about, the yield of what the power can do. So you need massive solar panels to get that. It's fine for your phone or for some hot water or something, or a battery. But so you can't have it running. You can't power a car, but you can have your, as a source where you plug into. That is very much possible. But you can't have the car powered by it itself. You can use solar power, which has been, let's say, recouped into the grid, and charge your car with that. I don't know if that answers the question.
But could you, I mean, let's say if it's on the roof, can it supplement the charging, not
yes, it
fully
can.
Charge it?
Of course, it can supplement the charging. But again, you have other challenges of it being on the roof. It's a structural issue. There's weight on the roof. When you have things very high up, it affects the stability of the cars, these heavy panels. So you've got to take all that balance into consideration and, before you do it. And right now, it's not, doesn't look like it's very practical.
Dhruv, can you quickly ask your question? We have a few minutes left.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dhruv Shetty from the Rotaract Club of Jain College. My question to you, sir, is what technological advancements can be made in order to make the EVs feasible? And secondly, once we get into using EVs, there might be also a need of recycling the petrol cars or the diesel cars. So can those diesel or the petrol cars be converted into the EVs?
Yeah. So I think, on the first bit, which is, I think you're talking on the recyclability. Is that right? So I think clearly over there, or the second bit, which is you can retrofit an electric powertrain into an old diesel. It is done, and it's being done quite a lot. But, again, it's something which is not encouraged, because overall you want to get rid of the older cars. You want them scrapped, not because of anything that they're not fit in terms of safety, in terms of fundamentally in terms of safety. Older cars are generally unsafe. They don't meet certain crash requirements. So I don't think there would be a policy to do that. I think they would want to, phase them out completely. So while, yes, changing the engine and putting an electric motor immediately solves the pollution problem. It doesn't solve the problem of safety, which is the other issue. And eventually you want everything to be integrated into one system to make it really work efficiently. Sorry, I missed your first question. What was that?
Almost,
Sir,
you've
it
got
was
about 20 questions
what
left.
technological advancements can
Yeah.
be made in order to
Okay, so I think
make
basically
the
it's in the area of batteries and charging infrastructure, faster charging and batteries which have longer range, which are more compact, and also it's all down to the batteries. The motor and all is quite fine. So frankly, it'll be batteries. They're looking at different chemistries in batteries. They're looking at solid state batteries, all that sort of thing. So the battery breakthrough, when that happens, it'll really take off.
Satyan, can we just extend for a few minutes? I think we've got too many questions, Hormuz. So if you don't mind, we'll extend for 7 minutes. Satyan, can you hurry up and...
Sure. Hormuz, really captivating discussion. I had a question. Have you been able to personally examine the Tesla, and what is your view on Tesla?
Yeah, I've driven a Tesla. In fact, I just drove one last week. A guy in Baroda has one. So look, I mean, Tesla, obviously it's the poster boy of electric cars. Clearly, I think their main thing is what they have done is they've kind of had a first mover advantage. They've captured the world in terms of making electric cars look practical, cool. But I don't think it's the best car, actually. If you see the interior, they can be quite cheap. In fact, this one had a lot of old Mercedes parts in it. So, but they've got that massive screen over there, which looks like a TV. They've got some really cool features, and they've got their own supercharging network in the wherever they go. So you have an exclusive charging over there, and their battery technology today is by far the best in the world. That's what gives them the edge. Range, performance, everything, it comes from the battery. So like I said earlier, the battery is the key to an electric car, and they've got the best technology.
Thank you.
Pratap, yours next.
Yeah. Hi, Hormuz.
Hi.
Wanted to ask you whether you've done a analysis between how many units are required to charge a car versus the liter of petrol that we actually pay for, and whether, how does that economics work out?
Yeah, we've done that. Depends on the car, depends on the consumption of the thing. So like a petrol car, electric cars also, the heavier they are, the bigger they are, they take more, they consume more, let's say, kilowatt hours. So typically a car which consumes, let's say, about, or does on an average 3.7 kilometers per kilowatt hour, I think you could safely say that working will be around maybe 1.5 rupees a kilometer, vis-a-vis 10 rupees a kilometer for a car that gives you 10 kilometers per liter.
Okay, and what do you think of the auto component industry? Are they going to really be slammed with this big change in EV?
Yeah, they will. I mean, revolution obviously slams everyone, because a lot of the parts, especially powertrain parts, will become obsolete. So unless they adapt, they have to adapt, move into things which like brushes and motors and controllers and all the components that EVs need. They need to get into that. But normally the moving parts or the part content is much less in an EV than in a normal car.
Thanks.
Ravi, your question.
Do we have any technology by which we can mine the precious metals coming out of the spent batteries?
So they are looking at recycling on that. I think there are studies being done, but to be honest, right now there's no real silver bullet solution for recycling of batteries. I mean, what they're doing is after the battery gets finished in an electric car, they'll use it for, let's say, stationary purposes, to power a house or power something else and chalao the battery that way. But in the end, there's no real recycling kind of a technology that's there yet.
Thank you.
Ashok Jatia.
Yes. Hi. If I were to buy a car today, would you suggest that I should look only at EV now going forward, or should I still stick to the old one, conventional ones?
Oh, you can buy an EV now if you can operate it within the constraints of what an EV is. So basically, if you're using it for town, you have parking at home where you can put a plug point. I would say definitely get an EV. They're expensive, so you're not going to get value for money. So it depends. If you're fine with all that, definitely get an EV. And don't just get it. As I said, they are so easy to drive. Whether it's your driver, they are smooth. There are no jerks. It's linear, ultra responsive. You tap it and it shoots. they are, I think what people are not realizing is the ease of driving an EV offers. You know, people really get zapped by how easy it is to drive.
Thank you.
Zinia, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Hormuz.
Can you take it to Mahabaleshwar?
No. I know you got stuck on the way. I was there. But no, I want to know that if you have EV at home now, if you buy a Tata or that Morris, which one should we buy? I mean, I'm debating between those two as a runaround car in town only. What would
So
you?
I think between the two, the MG is a better car overall.
Yeah.
But I think the Tata value for money is superb. I mean, 4-5 lakhs is a lot of money. But if you
Yeah.
can spend, you get better range in the Morris, in the MG. It's
Yeah.
slightly bigger, and yeah, fundamentally the range is a bit more, and it just feels the ride also is a little better. But even then, so
And,
you're
and
if you
for
wanna stay at the back.
electricity, is it the same? Like, I mean, is it very expensive on the electricity?
No,
or
no,
it's
no.
difference?
They'll fundamentally be the same. The thing is, the Tata has a smaller battery. That's where they've saved the cost. It's got a 30 kilowatt hour battery, whereas the MG has a 44 kilowatt hour battery. Now, 14 kilowatts is a lot in terms of range, but it saves you a lot of money. So it's really what you want. If you're not going to be running too much, you can go for the next one. But again, you know, about 180 kilometers is a I would keep that as a limit. Whereas in the MG, it's 250 plus.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've got some more questions from Dhruv, and Harshvardhan, but I'm not sure. I mean, we've got really way past the time. So maybe you can write about it or ask Hormuz at some other time, because we've gone way past. Do you mind if we take a couple of more questions?
I'm fine. I don't know about y'all, so I'm okay.
Harshvardhan, do you want to quickly ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Sir, I did put up my question on the chat box.
Sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So shall I repeat it? Okay.
Yeah,
No.
please. Yeah, go ahead. That might be
So,
fast.
sir, basically, I just had this one doubt. Switching from fuel engines, okay, and coming on the electronic engines, there's a lot of probability of having a power loss, like in the power of the vehicle. So, is there any point which the electronic company is working on to improve this?
No, in fact, it's to the contrary. You have better performance, because the thing about an electric motor, it produces your maximum torque, which is your pulling power from zero. An engine, you have to build it up. That's the way it works, because you have to go to about 2000, 3000 RPM. Whereas with an electric car, it's quick off the bat. So actually you can get away with less power in an electric car because of the sheer responsiveness of the engine. It's only at the top end, when you want to go beyond, let's say 120 or really high speeds, that there's a sudden sharp drop off in an electric car's performance. But we don't really do that. So I think it's actually quite the opposite. The electric cars, in terms of performance, are far better than an IC car, especially in stop-start traffic and when you're shooting off the line.
Okay.
Someone had a question about mass transport and whether that it would work for mass transport, an electric car. I mean, an electric bus maybe.
Yeah, so I think for mass transport, people are looking at hydrogen as an option, because see the difference between hydrogen. Hydrogen is also in a way an electric car, just the way that the fuel comes from hydrogen and not the battery. So what hydrogen does also, it produces electricity with a byproduct of just water. And so it's very, very clean. So people are looking at hydrogen, and Indian Oil also are talking about hydrogen. Why it's better for buses? Because for a bus being such a heavy vehicle, you need massive amount of batteries. Of course, you can charge that. Then they're talking about swappable batteries. So when the bus comes to the depot, with a forklift, you can change the batteries, but it can be a bit messy. So they're looking at options, but everyone says that for long distance, for hydrogen is a better technology, but that's still very far away, because to produce hydrogen is challenging, and then you have to store it. It has to be stored in a cylinder, which is 700 PSI minimum. So it's all got a lot of technological challenges right now, but countries like Japan and all, they are very far advanced in hydrogen, and they're working on it.
Thank you, Hormuz, for so patiently answering all our questions.
My pleasure.
Now I'll ask Akshay to.
Thank you so much, Shehnaz, and thank you, Mr. Sorabji, for such a wonderfully informative talk. These are challenging times, and going from e-meetings to e-vehicles, there is a revolution, and thank you for bringing us, or rather informing us and bringing us closer to that revolution. I can assure you that our members now feel far more informed on the subject of e-vehicle thanks to your talk. As a token of our appreciation, we will on your behalf plant 10 fruit-bearing trees at Nilmati Danwal Graham Panchayat, Maharashtra. The said certificate will be sent to you shortly.